Live with my man, Jason Sobel, from a place that's called Augusta National. I think Tiger and Jim Nance, I can see in the back walking to the range. Sobel, you can hear him on Sirius XM all week. You can find him on the twitter.com writing about gambling, and we're going to dive deep into that from the LIV guys to the PGA Tour guys. But first, Sobel, does it get any better in this week?
This is the best week of the year. If you don't think it's the best week of the year, turn the podcast off right now because you're not going to like what we have to say over the next little while because we're going to wax poetic about what this place is like, what this place means. And by the way, John, you're going to get me in trouble. I'm not doing the podcast from out on the range or out on the golf course for the Augusta National folks
Not
who I'm sure
allowed.
are listening right now. I'm in podcast room number 2. I signed for it. And by the way, people talk about Augusta National maybe not being so progressive and maybe being old and stodgy. They have podcast rooms here. There's nowhere else in golf where you can go to a tournament and go to one of the podcast rooms. I'm in a podcast room specifically for this. How good is that?
Do not sleep on Fred Ridley getting with the times here, Sobel. I mean, that is freaking awesome.
It's great. I got a nice
Okay.
little backdrop of Tiger Woods photos and
How awesome is that? Okay,
photos from here.
before we dive into some picks and some gambling, I want to hit on two things.
Mhm.
First, you just sat. Tiger just talked. His allotment is longer than every other player, rightfully so. We don't get to hear from him that much anymore. Anything do you jump out about what Tiger just said?
I think the overarching theme of everything that Tiger said in the press conference today was just gratefulness, thankfulness for being able to continue to compete at this golf tournament and at this golf course every single year. And he has said it 100 times over the last couple of years, but he didn't think he was ever going to get here before, just a couple of years ago, where from the place where he was in a near fatal car accident, thought he might lose his leg, thought he may never play golf again, to he made the cut last year. I mean, I know it wasn't great on the weekend, but he made the cut. And so you listen to Tiger now, and it's a very, very different Tiger Woods from the one we might have heard 10, 15, 20 years ago, which was just sort of staring you down and, hey, let's get on with this stuff because I want to go play golf and I want to beat everyone's butts out there. Now it's, hey, I'm very thankful. I go back and Charlie and I have these little putting games, and this is what me and my dad used to do. And it's very, very I think eye-opening sort of what the game has done for Tiger and how Tiger sees the game maybe differently than he saw it, like I said, 10, 15 years ago. So I thought that was the major theme of everything he was saying. It almost sounded, John, like a press conference from somebody who had just done the ceremonial first tee shot here at Augusta on Thursday morning, who then comes into the interview room and says, you know, it's nice to wax poetic about the golf tournament. It's nice to come back every year. I mean, I don't think that Tiger is not going to compete. I think it's could be a good week. Like he said, he's healthier and able to prep a little bit more than he could last year. And last year he made the cut. But just to hear him waxing poetic about what this means, I think that's, like I said, a much different Tiger than we've ever known in the past.
Well, I think last year, clearly, when he announced whatever Wednesday or Thursday the week before, he was by far the biggest story, that week. It feels like this week, not that he's under the radar. I mean, he's Tiger Woods, but the LIV interaction, those guys, obviously, we're recording this on Tuesday. So those guys are going to the dinner tonight. Being there on the grounds, what's the vibe like, talking to players, agents, whatever, of those guys intermixing? I saw Rory's comments. I think there are some of those Florida younger guys that no one cares about. It feels like it's the animosity maybe for the older crew. What's your thoughts on just so far 48 hours being there with kind of the intermixing of the two groups?
I thought it was going to be stranger than it is. I thought it was going to be really different. I thought it was going to be weird to have, guys wearing LIV outfits and a range goats hat at Augusta National. But quite frankly, this venue is the great equalizer. This is the best place to have everybody come together and just go out there and go play golf. And so there won't be any sort of confrontations. There won't be any bad blood. I mean, like very much like Rory said, he said, I see Brooks and DJ all the time. He was planning to play with Brooks today. I think they're out on the golf course right now as we're speaking. But he's like, I haven't spoken with Phil. So it's just like any business. If you work for a bigger company, you're like, yeah, well, there's people that I speak with on a pretty regular basis, people that I don't really talk to. And so I think it's the same with them. It's not nearly as, I think, strange or weird as I thought it was going to be. I think Cam Smith was very reserved in his press conference yesterday. Didn't necessarily seem remorseful about moving to LIV, but admitted that there were tournaments that he really misses playing on the PGA Tour, admitted that, it's a little strange for him to be here and among those players. He admitted that he brought a wardrobe for every day that has LIV logos on it, and said, I also brought another wardrobe for every day in case the powers that be at Augusta National don't want me to wear this. Said, I'm not going to wear it if they don't want me to. And so I think there is a deferential treatment of Augusta National here for all those players, that even though it's, hey, you know what, we joined this renegade tour, we're trying to do something different, we're disrupting the world of professional golf, they also understand that they're not above Augusta National. They can come here and they're still invited guests of this tournament and this club.
Well, you wrote about, we'll start with the LIV crew, because Brooks just won at a course that you told me it's just local muni in Orlando, so it's not exactly Oakmont, but DJ's had a ton of success here. And starting with Cam, I think his comments yesterday were basically like, my game, admitted he's not as good as he was, and he was really the only guy besides Scottie Scheffler last year that could have won this tournament. So that trio of, Brooks, while he hasn't played as well over the last several years, he's definitely the most accomplished of the group, and DJ's the most consistent, and Cam, it felt like, was on this rocket ship. Of those three guys, I know you wrote about their betting odds and how they've been playing. Mm-hmm. Any interest from a gambling side of any exposure on any of those three? If you were going to, who would be the safest and riskiest bet?
The safest and the riskiest might be the same player, and I think it's Brooks Koepka. And what I mean by that is he's got the highest ceiling, and maybe the lowest floor. And I think that maybe he has the highest ceiling and lowest floor combination out of anybody in the entire field this week. And again, for those who aren't necessarily into betting, for those who are just kind of jumping in for the Masters, what we mean by that is that, look, do I think that Brooks Koepka's win at Orange County Nationals Crooked Cat Golf Course last week at Daily Fee Muni in Orlando has anything to do with him going out and playing well this week? No, I really don't. That said, I don't know. Brooks plays really well at the majors and tends to flip a switch right beforehand and play his best golf at them. I didn't see it coming beforehand, but if I'm only allowed to take one guy for an outright play, I take Brooks. But if it's, hey, you know what, who might play the worst of those three? I think Cam Smith and DJ are probably going to be a little more consistent, a little more middle of the pack. And I could see Brooks absolutely going out and shooting a pair of 76s too and missing the cut. So I think there's a greater disparity in the potential results for him, a greater variance for him. The one guy I do like, if we're still on the LIV topic here, think about the one player who embodies everything that LIV is about, embodies the disruption, embodies playing the role of the villain, wear the black hat, have all the fans, maybe not outwardly and directly rooting against you this week, but maybe sort of, just some whispers through the tall pines here, kind of, I don't really want that guy. Patrick Reed thrives on this type of situation. He's probably my favorite LIV player on the board right now. And I don't know that he's going to go win this week, but look, there's 18 LIV players who are competing in this tournament. More than 20% of the entire field is comprised of LIV players. Don't be surprised when a few of them are on the leaderboard this weekend. I really think Patrick Reed could be one of them.
I saw a headline yesterday on Monday. He played a practice round, decked out in 4 aces, solo, just by himself. So, he's just, he's a renegade's renegade. Talk about guys that are not renegades. Rory, obviously the leader in the clubhouse in terms of popularity, now without Tiger, on tour, probably the biggest star. The best player, Scottie, and the guy who felt like he was dominating and then had a little stomach virus, so he feels a little out of sight, out of mind, but he's still arguably the best player in the world, Jon Rahm. Who do you like out of that three this week?
Yes. The answer is yes. I like all of them, but no, I like one a little bit better than the others, and it is Jon Rahm. First of all, you mentioned the stomach virus at the Players Championship. I, I'm going to admit that I thought it was a little strange. He was there on site. He had already played one round. I'm like, Jon Rahm's not the kind of type whose belly hurts. It's a little tummy ache and withdraws from a golf tournament. I have it on good authority, though, that he did indeed, like, he was very, very sick and he could not have played that day. So which makes me feel much better. It's not, hey, there's something going on at home. It's not, some sort of like defiance against the PGA Tour. It's just, I was really sick. I couldn't play. And that was a month ago. So certainly he's much healthier now, and that's not bothering him anymore. That said, you look at what Jon Rahm has done over the last few months, besides that. He's won 3 times already this year on the PGA Tour. In fact, won 5 times in his last 12 starts around the world. Number 1 on the PGA Tour in strokes gained total this year, John, which, look, we can look at wins. We can look at, scoring average. Essentially, strokes gained total shows who's playing the best. He's number 1 there. Number 3 in strokes gained tee to green. 4th in approach shots. 17th around the greens. 12th in putting. I don't know, John. Maybe you can find something else like, bunker shots on Thursday afternoons on odd number holes, but there isn't anything that Jon Rahm isn't doing, not just well, but like exceedingly well, like better than almost everybody else who plays golf for a living. That is, I shouldn't have to tell anybody, a tremendous asset. I mean, we talk about this being a second shot golf course. Not only is, do you need to hit your irons well, though? You've got to hit it well off the tee. You've still got to chip and putt well. He's doing everything that he needs to do. It's a Jon Rahm week for me. He's my favorite play on the board.
Yeah, I mean, 2018 4th, 2019 9th, 2020 7th, 2021 5th. Last year he was really shitty, 27th. I mean, so he, I mean, Rory, it feels, I think Tiger mentioned this morning, like he's going to win one. I think we all agree. It feels inevitable, and it feels like he got his swag back last week. The putter change, he's who I'm betting pretty heavily on. For you out there, I mean, the expectation, honestly, 2 of the 3 of these guys not being in the last couple final groups come Sunday would be shocking, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Shocking would be strong, but I'm just saying, like, these guys, 2 of the 3 of them expect to be in the mix.
You would think so. Certainly, you would assume so. Although defending champions have not played very well here over the years. I will say about Scottie Scheffler. I know we'll get to Rory in a second, but Scottie Scheffler trying to become the 4th player to successfully defend here at Augusta. He's successfully, his title defenses so far this year. Phoenix, he won. The API finished 4th. Match play finished 4th. So he's shown that he's a course horse, comes back to the same place every year and plays well. But that's a difficult proposition for him, even though he is on an absolute heater right now. For Rory, look, I can sit here and say it's all more mental than it is physical or technical, but it is, and he knows this, and he's tried everything. Rory's come into this event and tried to focus as much as he could and understand the importance of what it would mean to him. He's tried to come to this event and trick his mind into thinking, it's no big deal. It's just a golf tournament. Doesn't matter. He's tried to come in and play golf the week beforehand. He's tried to not play for 2 weeks beforehand. He has tried everything he possibly can. The strategy this year is, hey, I really like Augusta National. It's a fun golf course to play. I'm going to play as much as I can. He says he's played 81 holes of golf here in the past week. Just practice, prep, getting ready for this thing. I don't know that there's a secret formula. If there was, Tiger would have passed it on to him. Jack would have passed it on to him. He's got some pretty big time confidence and mentors that want him to go out there and finally win this thing. I hate to say inevitable, because if we were doing this podcast 30 years ago, we would have said a Greg Norman victory is inevitable. Yeah. At some point, we would have said an Ernie Els victory is inevitable. I'd like to think that Rory McIlroy has the absolute perfect skill set to go win this golf tournament at some point. And I'd also like to think that the weather forecast, which is calling for rain, it's going to be a soggy, soft, long golf course, at least over the weekend. plays right into Rory's hands. But it's a lot to ask for. I mean, this is a guy who he understands the significance, the historical significance of what would take place if he was to win this golf tournament. It's been 9 years since he won a major championship. There's a lot of stuff pushing against Rory, and I think every year that he doesn't win this one, it becomes a little bit more pressure internally and externally as well.
What about the Americans, the Ryder Cup type guys who haven't won this tournament? So excluding Jordan, JT, Xander, Finau, Cantlay, Colin. Is there a name of that kind of group, the like 18 to 28 to 1? Some of the younger guys, Cam Young, now Homa's coming on. Is there a name there that sticks out to you? For me, it's Xander. Now he's kind of a trendy pick, it seems like, but you look his success here, just the way he just looked a couple weeks ago. I had someone tell me who was around him, like he was pretty dialed. This is kind of his time of year. But again, he's pretty trendy, but I think of that group, that's who I'm going to go with. But I mean, you could pull out any of those other names and I could believe you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the bigger point here is that, I mean, I'm working on my ranking right now. Should be out later today on the Action Network, where I rank the entire 88-man field. I've been doing this for like 20 years. It's so difficult this year to the point where, and I actually wrote this in the intro, I need 10 players in my top 5. I need 20 in my top 10. I need 40 in my top 20. It's like there's double the amount of players who need to fit into those spots. And so no matter what you do, I'm working on the list, and Cam Young is going to be like 20th on my list. I'm like, he's really, really good. He probably shouldn't be 20th. And then I start looking at the 19 guys ahead of him. I'm like, well, I can't move him. Well, this guy, he should be even higher than he is. I mean, JT is probably too low on my list. Anyway, Patrick Cantlay, of all those players, is the player that I'm looking at. And nothing against Xander Schauffele or JT or Homa or anybody else. They're all fantastic players. They all have a chance. But Patrick Cantlay's numbers have been through the roof this year. And at some point, you get rewarded for that. I have explained it to you this way, John, in the past, that I look at it sometimes like a baseball pitcher. They call it positive regression, which is sort of like an oxymoronic statement, like a jumbo shrimp. But positive regression is sort of the betting industry term for, like, say, a pitcher who's got a 2.40 ERA, but he's 7-12 on the year. At some point, you keep pitching well, the wins are going to come because, the performance is there and you just haven't quite gotten the results. And Cantlay is one of those guys. Tony Finau is another one of those guys that I look at and I say, performance-wise, they've been great this year. The average fan, the casual fan, probably hasn't heard their names very much because they haven't been in serious contention to go win a golf tournament. But because the numbers are there, because the performances are there, those are guys that I really like, not only this week, but moving forward.
Two older guys that I'm going to have exposure to. I already do have a big bet placed on Jason Day. There's some concern a couple weeks ago is the vertigo, allergies. And then I saw you mention this guy's name who's really turned his season around, Justin Rose, from being a first-round leader, but a guy who's had success here. You also talked about, I think I saw you tweeting about the long odds guys. Jason Day's not anymore, but Justin Rose, guys, it's like 60 to 1 higher. That's happened like one time, even in that range, and it was Hideki. It's usually guys on average, like 28 to 1 and better. What was Tiger the year he won it? 50 to 1 or 45 to 1. And that's more name than anything. Right. Yep. So how about those two guys for being longer odds with a lot of positive experience here?
Look, if we're tracking, I guess my brain is a stock market, and all the different players are stocks going up and down throughout the day. Jason Day's got a red line that's going down. It doesn't mean I don't like him. It just means I probably like him a little bit less than I did a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Look, it was vertigo. Between us, he had vertigo in that match against Scottie Scheffler. Didn't want to use it as an excuse. Just said, hey, it was allergies. He was going to take some allergy medication. So I think some of the wires were crossed between the communications on the TV broadcast, but he had vertigo. There's a little trepidation from me in playing a guy that has had that going on. Secondly, doesn't have a great record here. He's had a few good starts here, good results, but he's also had some times where he's playing the best golf of his life and didn't play very well. And the third part about this is just the number itself next to his name. Jason Day at 22-1. This guy hasn't won in almost 5 full years. I mean, you're expecting him to go out and win at 22-1. I know you like him. I know he's been playing well. I know there are people out there that say, "Oh, well, I got a ticket on him at 150-1 4 months ago." If you did, congratulations. Don't rip up the ticket. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying, for me, he's too short right now. Justin Rose, a guy that I do like. I do think is playing some good golf. He's had more rounds leading this golf tournament than any other player in the history of the Masters who hasn't won it. I believe it's 8 career rounds. 4 of those have come after the first round on Thursday. If you're looking for a first round leader bet, I know we always like sort of kid about Charlie Hoffman, who's not in the field this week, but we always go, Charlie Hoffman, third day at Augusta. He shoots 64. He does it every time. The reality is that Justin Rose is that guy. Now, we don't quite make as much fun of him because he doesn't shoot 78 the next day and miss the cut or come close to missing the cut and finish in 58th place. Justin Rose had some good results, but he is a Thursday superstar. He might be the epitome of a Thursday superstar at this golf tournament. And he's a guy that I will at least have an investment on for a first round leader play.
Well, Sobel, enjoy the week. It's always cool that scene on Sunday. We think, you never know, weather could make things really weird really fast. Get a new green jacket. But you never know, could have a repeat winner. There's a lot of former champions in this. Maybe Larry Mize last. Is it his last, or was it another guy's last?
Sandy Lyle.
Sandy Lyle. So adios, Sandy.
Yep.
You had a good run, and yeah, enjoy the week.
I will try my best to enjoy it. Yeah, some other good bets out there. Look, we didn't mention the name Sungjae Im. I like him. Shane Lowry, 3rd place last year. I'll have a little bit of Shane Lowry as like a sort of outside long shot at about 60-1. Remember the name, John. Gordon Sargent. You can pick him up for low amateur at about plus 210 right now. That's a smash play for me this week. I think that kid makes the cut and maybe even makes a little noise on the leaderboard at some point early in the tournament. So Gordon Sargent, one of the best names out there. You can't forget that name.
That's awesome. I remember, was it the year Tiger won that because the low am always goes in with the champion? It was Victor Hovland sitting in there with him.
Yep.
That turned out to be pretty good. So yeah, I always like that at low am in Butler Cabin with Nance in the winter. That's always cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And a very predictable play, I think, for some of the bettors if you're paying attention out there to who these amateurs are.
For sure.
All right, guys. Well, we have a couple of questions from the chat here on AMP. First one is, what's the biggest surprise to not make the cut?
You hear that, Sobel?
Yeah, I heard him. Thanks, James. Let's see. Biggest surprise to not make the cut. I'm trying to think about who's down there on my ranking. Cam Smith, based on everything he was talking about in the interview room yesterday, is a full fade from me. Missing the cut is top 50 and ties make the cut this week. There's only 88 players in the field. You throw in the Sandy Lyles and the Larry Mizes and, a couple
Fred
guys
Couples.
like that, and Fred Couples, and, a few of the amateurs who probably aren't up to it. There's probably like 78 like legitimate, real professional golfers. And so you've got to, only have to beat about 3/4 of the field to make the cut. So I don't know that I'd say Cam Smith to miss the cut, but if I'm placing a bet, that might be what it is right now. I mean, I'm just trying to think of something that's going to give you a nice plus money bet, sort of a quote unquote long shot to miss the cut. Cam Smith might be at the top of that list for me right now. I'm not saying that he's going to miss it, but I'm saying there could be value on that play.
When you look a lot of the younger Americans that haven't played here very much, Homa miscut last year, Cam Young, it's just Colin Morikawa is a guy that he's just been off a couple times. Now, he's had success here. Now, this wouldn't be a surprise, but what if Phil is just terrible? I mean, it's not like he misses the cut by a shot, but is with the Lyles and the Freddie Couples, like he's 77, 78, because based on his work with LIV, I don't know how anyone would think he would be remotely competitive beside that he's been playing this place for 25 years.
Oh, I think it's very possible that Phil has a terrible week. I mean, we did a podcast yesterday for the Action Network where Evan Abrams, our director of research, was given some stats, and he said the public's favorite long shot play this week is Phil Mickelson. I just started laughing. I'm like, why? What are we doing here? He's played 3 events on LIV so far this year. He's gone in descending order. He started in 27th place, then 32nd and 41st. His scrambling, I mean, look, if there's one thing that Phil did better than anybody else over the 25 years of sort of the Phil era, was he could get up and down from a garbage can. I mean, this guy that could, have a tight lie at Augusta, throw it way up in the air with a flop shot and land it 2 feet away and tap in. His scrambling on LIV so far this year, 57.89%. He ranks 34th out of 48 players on that tour. It's just, he's not good right now. I'm not saying he can never get good again. I'm not saying he can't improve. It's just right now, Phil Mickelson is not playing good golf.
Okay, we got that was from 15 Below Zero. I want to thank him for that question. Next one's from Andrew Sampson. Rahm is to win the Masters is the best bet on the board. Sobel and John, what are your thoughts on that as a bet?
Yeah, all in. Love it. He's my favorite play. I will have just a little bit on. I mentioned Sungjae Im, he's about 35. I mentioned Shane Lowry at 60, but I think when you have a guy that you like who's a single digit number, who's at 9-1, it's hard to chase too many. You don't really want to fill out that card with 10 other guys when you've got a guy who's 9-1. It's okay when you've got 10 guys who are all triple digits, but you can't have a guy who's a single digit number and then say, oh, and I'm also going to have this, and this. That's how golf betting Twitter works, John, is guys go, you know what? I like Scottie this week. I'm going to bet Scottie and Rory and Rahm and JT. And, for a long shot, I'm thinking maybe Cantlay. And you're like, yeah, no kidding. But they get to pat themselves on the back. They get go, hey, good job. We hit another winner here. That is not what I will recommend to anybody. But Jon Rahm is indeed my favorite play on the board as far as an outright. I get that it's a short number, but I like everything about him. He was in the interview room earlier today. I was doing Inside the Ropes on SiriusXM, PGA Tour Live. And we went to the interview. He sounded like a guy. Look, he wasn't impolite. He wasn't short with anybody, but he sounded like a guy who was like, hey, man, just get me the first tee on Thursday. I'm ready to roll.
I don't know if you've had a chance yesterday to get out on the course, but obviously talking to these guys, the changing of the tees, like specifically 13, is that going to directly benefit guys like Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy?
I would think so. I mean, look, we keep talking about all this stuff. Roll the ball back, move tees back. The advantage now is to the longer hitters. Zach Johnson does not get an advantage when we move the tee box back 20 yards. So he doesn't go, okay, cool. Well, now everyone's going to lay up. I know DJ said he's going to lay up. I'll still believe it when I see it. But no, you're giving more of an advantage to the bigger hitters out there. And so I've got to believe that some of these guys are going to go for it still. It's gonna be like
Morikawa then. Morikawa probably the best short hitter on tour. To give you red flaggers is still a second shot golf course.
I mean, look, Zach Johnson once laid up on every par 5 here. That was 16 years ago when we won the golf tournament. I think we make too much of the fact that, hey, if you go for it, you're gonna make eagle, and if you don't go for it, you're gonna make a bogey. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
we all know that. In some respects, I love it when a guy lays up to a good number. These guys are so good with their wedges. You're definitely not going to make a bogey, and you're probably going to put yourself in a good position to make a birdie. Whereas when you go for it, you might hit one in that creek guarding the green. All of a sudden, you're in some trouble, and you got to drop on a weird lie. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. So I've never had a problem with a guy laying up out here. I know all the, everybody who's watching on TV and watching here at the golf course, and go, let's go for it. Well, that's not your money on the line. That's not your title hopes on the line. So I don't have a problem with anybody, especially a ball striker like Colin Morikawa. If he has to lay up to 80 yards every day, and he's got an 80-yard wedge shot in, my guess is over 4 rounds he'll play it in 2 under. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, he's not Sobel or Middlekauff there with a wedge in his hand,
Just absolutely. You might get up and down with it. I'm topping one right into that creek right there.
Is that all, James?
We got one more. Last one from our boys over at Snaps. We had to get one of our guys in here. Who does Tiger hate more, Phil or Bryson?
Probably Phil. That's a good question. I haven't been asked that question yet. I which is funny because I think that relationship between Tiger and Phil from the 5-year period between 2017 and 2022 was really good. It was the best it had ever been. I mean, these guys became friends, and I tried to relate it to the company that any of us would work in. And I often said that about Tiger and Phil, whereas Tiger and Phil were never really friends. They worked at the same company. They were never really friends. And after a while, you work for the same company for 20 years. You kind of look at the guy who's been there across the cubicle from you for 20 years. You go, hey man, we're kind of friends now. I mean, you and I have been doing this long enough that even if we were rivals when we first started, because we both wanted the same accolades and achievements, and we're both fighting each other for it, at some point you're like, well, you know what? All these guys, they don't remember the good old days, and we can sort of reminisce about those years. And so I think that Tiger and Phil actually became pretty close, but I think what Phil did last year pissed off a lot of people in golf, pissed off Tiger Woods, and Tiger has made no bones about the fact that he is not a fan of all the LIV guys right now. So I would say it's probably more Phil than anybody.
And doesn't it feel like Bryson, of all the LIV guys, is kind of his right-hand man, Phil's, on that tour? So he kind of reiterates, hammers down like what they're doing. We're progressive, the YouTube stuff. I can do whatever I want. Because it felt like Tiger years ago at that President's Cup, Phil too, they kind of were drawn to Bryson, where a lot of guys didn't like him because they're kind of golf nerds at heart too. And he was just kind of unique. And now he's been, Bryson, I think, said last week that he just doesn't even text me back anymore.
Yeah, he did say that. Look, I think we made too much out of the Brooks Koepka eye roll at Kiowa a couple of years ago when Bryson was walking past, but that's essentially the response that most people have to Bryson now, and that includes his fellow players. Bryson says something about his distance. Bryson says something about technology. Bryson says something about LIV, and everyone just kind of rolls their eyes. It's not, man, I hate that guy. It's not, what a jerk. It's okay. Just kind of roll your eyes at him, and so I think it's probably more, if we're talking hatred, more hatred for Phil and more eye rolls for Bryson.
You the man, Sobel.
Thanks as always.